welcome to the show.
And welcome back to another episode of the Astros Future podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Price, also known as Astros Future. You can find my work at astrosfuture.com. Find me on X at Astros Future.
And I'm your co-host, Kenny Van Doren.
Joining us today is a senior writer for MLB Pipeline, Jim Callis. Welcome to the show, Jim. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing? You excited? The Astros have two early draft picks. When was the last time that happened?
2015. We're going to get into that. The draft capital that they have this year is something we haven't seen in really over a decade at this point. So that kind of goes right into it. Before we get into specific prospects, but the Astros having the 2 first-round picks, 17, 28. They got 28 based on the PPI pick. How important in your mind is this draft for rebuilding the system? We know that there's been a lot of trades, promotions just over the last probably 6-7 years. And they have an opportunity now with 6 picks in the first 4 rounds to kind of rebuild the system.
Yeah, I mean, as you noted, it's their best opportunity since 2025 when they had, the 2nd and 5th picks because they failed to sign Brady Aiken, which I think trading Brady Aiken for Alex Bregman worked out okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably a pretty good move. And they also, I think, had a sandwich pick that year and got Daz Cameron also. So I want to say, if I remember correctly, at that time, I think it was the largest bonus pool in draft history. And no team's ever had 2 of the top 5 picks like they've had before. But no, I mean, it is really important. I mean, I talked to Kenny about this. I joke with the Astros about it. Nobody ever ranks their farm system high. So I was going to say, the farm system isn't ranked high, but it hasn't been ranked high in about a decade, and they still manage to produce big leaguers. But no, I think it is a big opportunity. I would think, barring something shocking, that the guys they take at 17, 28 will immediately rank among the top 4 prospects in the farm system.
So having those 2 picks, and then you mentioned the bonus pool, they got a huge bonus pool this year. Do you see them potentially using one of those picks as maybe trying to get a guy under slot to try to go over slot with maybe a prep player later on?
I mean, yes and no. I think it's more a case, when you're picking 17, that's your first pick. You're beholden to what the teams do in front of you. And the way it usually works is if you're picking 17th, probably the 8th or 9th guy on their draft board will be available to them. It'll be somebody they like more than other teams, but it'll be good value. I think it's more a case of if there's a player you really like, say more than the industry, you will avail yourself of the opportunity to take a discount and then do something later. But the tricky thing is, you can't just take. I don't think you can just take a discount to take a discount. That's where you screw up your draft because you're taking a lesser player. If it's not the guy who's at the top or near the top of your board, or let's say you have 4 guys who are close and one of them is significantly cheaper, so you go that route. But if you're just looking to go discount for discount's sake, even picking 28th, anybody you're going to make fall to 28, you might as well just pick at 17. And anybody you're going to make fall to your 3rd pick, which would be in the 2nd round, how can you guarantee who's going to get to that pick? I don't even have the number in front of me, but I assume that's mid 50s, right? Probably their next pick.
I think 57. If I remember.
You can't guarantee. You could come up. I'll just throw out a crazy. I love Carson Ballmon. He's a high school lefty. You never know where the high school pitchers are going to go. You can't just say, well, we'll save at 17, 28, and then we'll pay Carson Ballmon at 50. You would just take him at 28. So I don't think they'll necessarily look to take a discount unless it's a case where I can't think of it. Somebody they like at 17. And they don't think he's let's say Daniel Jackson at Georgia, and I've heard that name for them. And I don't hear Daniel Jackson's name quite as high as I think I might. So maybe if they really like Daniel Jackson, they take him at 17, and maybe he's not going to go for another 10 picks or so. You could save somebody that way. But I don't think they would just take just going to make up Logan Hughes out of Texas Tech and say, well, we're going to take him to save $1 million to spend later. And if they do that, I don't think that's a great strategy.
Yeah.
But I do like Logan Hughes. So if he's listening, don't be afraid of Logan Hughes.
So what have you – I know you do the Astros list for MLB Pipeline, of course, at the top 30. Have you heard anything on the potential direction that the Astros might be looking? I know you're always going to take that best available guy that's on your specific draft board. But where do you think this one's heading for those 2 picks?
I hear college bats. But it's funny. It's not necessarily that. It's again that you want to talk about another strategy that's not good in the draft is to go in and say, hey, we want this position or we want this demographic. I think I'm hearing college bats the most for them because to be quite honest, when you get in that 15 to 30 range, there might be 10 of those guys might be college bats. I think college bats are going to be majority of the top players who go in that range. So I don't know if it's so much a philosophy that like, hey, we want to go grab some college bats. I mean, obviously they took Xavier Nyans with their top pick last year. But I just think that's going to be the best available talent. I haven't heard, it's a little unclear in this draft, college pitching wise, where the guys are going to go after Jackson, Florida goes in the top 5 picks or so. Like there might be 1 or 2 more guys who go ahead of the Astros. And so there will be some college pitchers in that range, but I just haven't heard those guys tied to the Astros. I mean, the name I've heard more than anyone, but it could just be because his name's popping back up again, is Logan Redeman from UCLA, who at one point looked like, hey, there's a chance he might not even get to the Astros pick at 17. And then he missed his last 6 starts at UCLA, but he threw a live bullpen 2 Mondays ago, and he threw at the draft combine on Wednesday. I mean, short outings, but at least you could see, hey, his arm's still attached to his shoulder and stuff. He wasn't throwing at the combine. He wasn't trying to air it out, and he didn't touch 98 like he did earlier in the year, but he looked reasonably healthy. So that's the one name I've heard, but I think, I don't know, like you hear Logan Redmond's name all over the place right now because, like I said, he's popping back into the discussion for a lot of teams.
Jimmy's going to get to a couple guys that he really likes that he's going to ask you about as there's possible guys landing at those picks, Jim. But you and Jonathan Mayo, I think it was 2 episodes ago on the Pipeline podcast, we're doing a back and forth kind of mock draft, and a name that came up, and I think it was Jonathan telling you to take him, Ryder Helfrich. What was it? Him? Who was?
We had him going 17.
That's what I was wondering. I mean, who was that guy that you guys were a little bit on the fence about him going at 17, if you remember?
I'm gonna look that up real quick because I was just saying, like, I keep hearing Ryder Helfrich going higher than that, so that one would surprise me a little bit. Yeah, we did that actually from the combine because we're running around so much. Jonathan went with Liam Peterson. Actually, he actually went pitcher, and he noted that we've been hearing hitters for the Astros, but a lot of the names we'd been hearing were off the board, so he mixed it up and went Liam Peterson. In my last mock, I went Justin LeBron at 17. Maybe that's who you're thinking of. And like in my last solo mock, I did go LeBron, and it was more not so much that I've heard, okay, the Astros, like, that's the floor, they're going to jump on him. But he's interesting, and I do think they're not afraid to roll the dice on guys like that. I mean, Xavier Nyans was kind of like that in last year's draft, where Xavier Nyans had some of the highest offensive upside of any high school player in the draft. But at the same time, there was some swing and miss. He takes a lot of pitches, so he draws a lot of walks, but he also gets behind the count a lot. And we've seen that this year. I think, like, last I checked, his walk rate was like 24%, and his strikeout rate was 30%. Yeah. So he's probably going to have to be a little more aggressive at some point. But anyway, my point is they're not afraid to roll the dice and go maybe a little higher risk on some of the bats. And Justin LeBron has one of the highest ceilings in the draft. You could argue he might have the highest ceiling in the draft. I mean, if he hits, he could be a 30-30 shortstop who's a plus defender at short. And I know he only hit about 230 in the SEC this year, and he didn't tear up the SEC last year. Although it's interesting because, and I will admit, I don't know where Jimmy went to school, but I know Kenny went to Mizzou and I went to Georgia. So we're both SEC guys. And the SEC, it's not even close to how much better the SEC is than the ACC is probably the number 2 league in college baseball. It's a good league. It's not close to the SEC. The SEC is far and away the best league. And so I know LeBron's getting dinged for hitting 230 in the SEC. In my mind, it's like, well, what if he played in the Big 12 or the Big 10 and hit 350? Then everybody would be like, oh, this guy's like, I just don't know how you account for that. Like, yeah, you want to see him play better. And look, there are a lot of other players who performed better than that in the SEC. It is a question. There are questions on the bat. But I'd say even if he's a 230 hitter in the big leagues, he might be at least a 2020 guy who's playing a really good shortstop, and that's a good player. So LeBron might be about as tough a guy as there is right now to figure out where he's going to go in the draft, because he's not going to go in the top 5 or 6 picks like we thought at the beginning of the year. But if you told me Orioles took him at 7, it wouldn't shock me. And if you told me he was on the board, say close to 20, it wouldn't shock me. But that might be who you were thinking about, Kenny, is the LeBron pick.
So looking at another shortstop that I was intrigued by early, and I think at this point he's probably played his way out of the Astros pick, but a couple names I've seen just around 17 and potentially 28 is Tyler Bell and Ace Reese. And I think Tyler Bell's possibly like a top 10 guy now, and Ace Reese, I'm not exactly sure, kind of like the college version of Xavier Nyans maybe, with the big time power and a little bit of swing and miss. But any thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, with Bell, there's rumors he could go as high as 2, like he could go in the top 5 on a deal. And I like Tyler Bell, and that was getting to what I was saying before. As much as I like Tyler Bell, I just think it's a crazy strategy if you were to spend a top 5 pick on a guy who belongs more in the middle of the first round, because how are you going to guarantee that whoever you want to get into your second pick? Plus, the slots are so high at the top of the draft that those teams are going to save at least $1 million just by paying the market rate for players because the slots are so high. Bell's kind of like LeBron in that I think it's a higher floor but a little less ceiling. Like he's more of a 2020 type of shortstop, switch hitter, solid defender. I think LeBron's a little bit better defender. And I do think he's probably in that 7 to 15 range, like even without cutting a deal. I don't think he quite gets to him. I mean, there will be a college bat. Like after you get past Rock Chalowski and Savon Lackey, all the college bats come with, okay, there's at least, here's a question that somebody has about him. And it's a pretty obvious question. And there's probably 8 or 10 college bats. They won't all go in front of the Astros, but some of them will. But you're going to look up and be like, oh, I'm kind of surprised that guy got to 17. And I think Bell will not quite get there. And I think Ace Reese is kind of in that same boat. I don't think he'll quite get there. He hit, I think it's 43 homers. I'm still having nightmares from the Super Regionals when they were playing at Georgia, and he was hitting home runs seemed like every time up. But he hit 43 homers in 2 years in Mississippi State. I think the difference between him and Nyans is he's not like with Nyans. Like we knew Nyans wasn't a shortstop, but he should be a good third baseman. With Reese, it's more like, can he play can he be an average or adequate third baseman, or is he going to play elsewhere? But he can really hit. And I don't think Reese quite gets to them either. But like I said, when you mentioned Helfrich, Drew Burress will go before him. Chris Akopian will probably go before him. We mentioned Bell, Ryder Helfrich, Derek Curiel, maybe AJ Garcia. I'm forgetting Sawyer Strohsnyder, on and on and on. Like some of these guys are going to get to 17 because we're not going to see them all picked. And that's why I do think unless there's a pitcher that really lights them up, that they probably will go college hitter. And the high school bats who could go around the pick 17 would be guys like Trevor Condon and Bo Laurence. And I just haven't heard them on those two guys. That doesn't mean they aren't, but I've heard the college names much more than the high school bats who are going to go in that area.
Less than 2 weeks now until the start of the draft, Jim. How many more mocks are you and Jonathan going to do? And can you peel back the curtain maybe and tell us where you're kind of thinking right now for that first pick with the Astros?
Yeah, it's so with Jonathan will do one this upcoming week that I think will be out Thursday night. I've lost track of the days. Is that the second? I think it's the second. And then I believe the next one would be due the 9th, but the draft is the 11th. So I think we might do the, wee hours of the 10th going into the 11th. We'll both do one at that point. So I kind of don't have to do a full mock until the very end. But I just think it's college hitters. Like I said, the last time I did a solo mock, it's funny. The 4 guys I mentioned, we've talked about 3 of them in depth and mentioned the 4th. Were LeBron, Ace Reese, Tyler Bell, AJ Garcia, who's an outfielder from Virginia. I actually, Jonathan and I keep talking about the fact that we don't hear Daniel Jackson's name quite as high as we think we would. This is a guy who's very athletic. He won the SEC Triple Crown. He's first catcher to go 25-25 in NCAA Division I history. He wound up with 32 homers. He's improving behind the plate. I think he can be, I don't think he's going to be a Gold Glover, but I think he'll be able to catch well enough. The thing is, he can show you plus speed at times, and he's super athletic. So if he's not a catcher, it's not like, oh, we got to put this guy at first base or DH. He could easily play the corner outfield. And so, it's interesting to me that some of the catchers who've gone the first round in recent years, Daniel Jackson did it in the SEC. I know the ball flies at Foley Field, but I want to say he hit 370 with 11 homers in 22 games on the road. And all those games were against, because they play, non-conference, they pretty much played home. So it's all SEC road series. All their SEC road series, which they won all of them, were against number 1 and 2 seeds in the regionals, I believe. And Omaha, throws in the games in Omaha. I don't know that they played an unranked team on the road. And he hit 370 with 11 homers on the road. So anyway, we've talked about the fact that we're surprised we don't hear his name a little bit higher. With all that said, the team I hear him with the most seems to be the Astros. And now part of that is with all these guys, when you pick 17 and 28, you get double the fun. And so I don't know if that's because he could go 17 or he could go 28, But I feel like if they took him at 17, it wouldn't shock me either, just because if his arrow keeps going up a little bit as we start coming down the stretch, then maybe he doesn't get to 28. But I think it's one of the I mean, it depends on who gets to him, but like it just seems like college bats make the most sense for them at 17.
And so looking at number 28, probably more college bats potentially. There's one that I've kind of been interested in just from reading y'all's draft reports on the guys and then some of the numbers he put up at Louisville. But Zion Rose, an outfielder, I think the only downside, I guess, for the Astros, it seems like the Astros have really favored up the middle type players, catcher, shortstop, center field. And I don't know if Rose profile is necessarily more towards center. I think it's more of a corner outfield spot. But what's your thoughts on him? And I know he dealt with a little injury this year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, he was hurt for part of the year. It wasn't anything serious. And he had a monster year when he played. And he kind of came into the year as a borderline first-round pick. And I don't know if it's because he missed time. You don't hear his name quite as much. But it's interesting. Like, when you're talking about him defensively, he's actually pretty athletic. And he can steal bases. But he doesn't have good defensive instinct. So he's more of kind of like a fringy, maybe average left fielder if you're lucky. But he can run. And he can hit. And he's got power. I think he'd be a guy who'd be pretty quick to the big leagues. Like, with that pick, outside of Daniel Jackson, if he's still on the board, I just hear a ton of outfielders. I hear him. I hear Sawyer Strohsnyder from TCU, who did not have a good final month of the season. I don't really think he gets all the way to 28, but it could get close. I hear Aiden Robbins from Texas, who you will run out in center field, but he's probably more of a corner guy. But he's interesting, too, because this is a guy who was hit over power when he came into Texas this year. He won the Big East batting title 2 years ago at Seton Hall. He led the Cape Cod League in batting last year. I think he hit 6 homers at Seton Hall, and he hit 24 this year at Texas. He kind of changed his swing, so he traded some average. It's usually not that easy to just say, okay, well, now I'm going to be power over hit. But, like, he's shown the ability to hit for high average. He's shown the ability to deliver power. He can run. I do think he's more of a corner outfielder in the long run, but he's kind of in that mix too. Strohsnyder, kind of the same mold where he played more right field at TCU because of Chase Brunson, but he's certainly athletic enough to at least give center field a try. I think he played center field in some midweek games, so they were pretty good about giving scouts a look at him. He'll get a chance. So if they do want an up the middle guy, like those two guys, you'd go like Rose is as athletic as those guys. He's just not a very good outfielder.
So you mentioned I was going to save it for later, but I'll ask now. But the Cape Cod, I know that's a big time league where a lot of really good, talented players go. How much weight do you put into performance there for the guys they go and they get to play in the wood bat and the ones that really have good numbers, either offensively or pitchers?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the Cape Cod is still the best summer league out there. I do think it's lost a little bit of luster. I mean, it's still number one, and it's still important because you get to see guys perform with wood bats. And they have, TrackMan up there. So you're getting exit velocities and spin rates on pitchers and all that stuff. So that's very important. Because, like, that's also the huge question is, like, when you're projecting these guys going from a metal bat to a wood bat. Like, so the wood bat performance matters. Now, the downside is, I think just because of the nature of pitching, teams are a lot more cautious with pitchers. And it's kind of like the Arizona Fall League, where if your guy was healthy all season, and let's say, especially if he was a starter, and he made his 14 regular season starts and whatever in the postseason, you don't want him to go add more innings in the summer. So you don't have as many. The pitching is not what it used to be. Similarly with NIL, if I'm a mid-major school and I have a guy who's got a good arm, it's not really my best interest to have the guy go pitch summer ball and everybody be like. Now, the flip side of that is everybody usually knows who those guys are anyway, so they're still going to come after them. But like just advertising, hey, here's my guy. It'd be the equivalent of sending a guy to Arizona Fall League and then not protecting him in the Rule 5 draft. Like you're letting everybody get a chance to see how good he is. So I don't think the pitching is what it used to be, but I still think like seeing guys perform with bats, especially like how much power they hit for, it does matter. So I think it matters, maybe not quite as much as it used to, but you still will see guys who had really good Cape and maybe not a very good spring, and the Cape props them up, and vice versa. You might have guys with a very good spring, and maybe they didn't hit with wood, and people will be kind of like, I don't know. So, like, teams do look at it. It's just the pitching is not as good as it used to be, say, 10 or 15 years ago.
Jim, I went back and looked at the 2016 Astros top 30. At the top of the show, we mentioned how this is the first time since the 2015 draft the Astros have had 2 first-rounders. Bregman went second, and he started the next year's first in the system. Tucker was fifth, and then started in the system in the top 30 as fourth. Daz Cameron was fifth. I'm going to put you on the spot, Jim. I know you haven't looked at it yet. You've been in full draft prep, but with 2 picks inside the top 30, where would those guys realistically land on the top 30 Astros list, in your opinion? Just thinking about it right now.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say not this podcast, but I went on Astros podcast back then in the off season, and they killed me for daring to rank Alex Bregman ahead of AJ Reed, and it was funny. Like, they just killed me. And because Baseball America, and those guys are all friends of mine because I worked there forever. JJ Cooper had been on their podcast, and they had Reed ahead of Bregman. I was just like, all due respect to you guys and to JJ, and I liked AJ Reed. It wasn't I didn't like AJ Reed, but it's like, I don't even think that one's close. Like Alex Bregman, I thought AJ Reed would be a better big leaguer, but Alex Bregman was exactly who I thought he was. So to their credit, one, I ran into him at the World Series. One of the guys recognized me. I went because my oldest child, my oldest son, who's now 31, is a huge Astros fan. So we went to the games in Houston. And then when they had me on the podcast the following year, they're like, okay, like, we apologize. You were right. Anyway, I just made me laugh. I went back and looked at that list, how much heat I got, because AJ Reed, I think, had the best numbers in the minors. I think it depends on who they take. Like, it's interesting because you gotta have two. I mean, I think they're definitely going the top 4. And it's funny because Kevin Alvarez and Xavier Nines, who are 1-2, are kind of polar opposites of each other. Where Alvarez, I mean, he has ceiling, but he's kind of a floor guy. Like, that guy's 18 years old. He's controlling the strike zone, making contact in single A. He's not tearing cover off the ball, but he is actually showing more power than I thought he might show as an 18-year-old in single A. And so you feel like that guy's going to hit, like that guy's going to get the most out of his tools. And then Nines is more of that kind of, not quite boom or bust, but it's a high ceiling. Like I mentioned before, 24% walk rate, 30% strikeout rate, or 31% strikeout rate. Like, if you told me Xavier Nines hit 35 homers in a big league season, I'd be like, yeah, he could do that. But if you told me, that guy's going to strike out 200 times in a big league season and maybe he doesn't get to his power, that's possible too. So it almost depends, like, what kind of player they take. The interesting would be, like, if they took LeBron, like, how bold do we get with LeBron, where, like, he's kind of in that boomer bust? I guess looking at it realistically, I would think, and it's not based on exactly where they picked the guy or where Nines got picked, that unless, let's say Alvarez and Nines continue to perform like they're performing, which is very well for teenagers in single A, I'd probably be inclined, whoever they took at 17, like, would probably rank ahead of Nines, and whoever they took at 28 would probably rank behind them. But, if they got Stroessner at 28, I'd probably put Stroessner ahead of Nines. Trying to think, like, who could get to him at 17. I don't know that they have a guy who'd get to him at 17 that I'd necessarily put ahead of Kevin Alvarez. Like, maybe LeBron, but I don't know. I'd have to, like, digest that. Well, when it happened, it would be interesting. I mean, I do like LeBron, and I do think he gets a little bit, not a bum rap, but I think people are a little, because again, if you put that guy in the Big Ten, I bet the guy hits, 320, 350 in the Big Ten, and then everybody's like, oh, it's fine. He'd be the interesting one because I do think his ceiling is exceptionally high.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this draft so exciting for the Astros fans, is just potentially 2 of their picks landing in, well, hopefully the top 5 prospects in the system. That would be a huge addition. Jim, I've seen other teams do it. The Astros really haven't done it. I think one time they did it maybe last year, but where teams will draft guys in that 6th through 10th round. And I think the Nationals did it a couple of years ago where they paid them like $7,500, like 3 guys in a row, or maybe 20,000, something like that, to really have some savings for either going over slot, maybe high in the 2nd round or after the 10th round. Just, I know we talked a little bit earlier about the draft strategy, but what's your thoughts on that? I know you don't want to use a premium pick on someone who you can get under slot, but what's your thoughts on the 6th through 10th round guys?
No, that makes more sense. I mean, you generally are doing that when you pay a guy, when you've spent the money ahead of time in terms of on earlier picks, and then you need to get back down under the bonus, get within the bonus pool. Because the way the bonus pool works, as you guys know, and your listeners might not, is anything from 0 to 5% over your bonus pool, you pay like a 75% tax on. That's the only penalty. But if you go 5% over your bonus pool, you lose a first round pick. And if it keeps going up, there are scenarios where you could lose 2 first round picks. Although nobody's ever even lost any kind of draft pick since they started the system back in 2012. And I don't think anybody ever will. So like, no, I don't have a problem with that. Like I know every year I do like kind of my own, like I'll randomly, use a random number generator to assign myself a team, and then I'll draft in their position. And I generally I do the first 10 rounds. I generally will keep taking the best player, the guy I like, the best player on the board as long as I can until I run out of money. So if I use my first 6 picks on the guys who I think are the best players on the board, and then generally I'd say like rounds 7 through 10, you probably have 900,000, maybe it'll be $1 million this year because the slots have gone up. Well, let's say $900,000 for those picks. If I have to take 4 guys for $50,000 total because I took a guy who I think is a 3rd round talent in the 6th round, I'll do that. So I do think that makes more sense because those picks also, I mean, if you look at the hit rate, I mean, yeah, there are very good players who come out around 6 through 10 every year, but the hit rate in those rounds is so low. So yeah, I'm all for taking the best player you can as long as you can. And then when you have to tighten it up money wise, go ahead and do that.
We've talked a lot about bats, Jim, especially on the college side. I was looking at the top 15, the top 30 right now, and of the 6 pitchers that were drafted in that group, 3 of those were essentially what were day 3 picks, no longer a day 3 of the draft. What can you say about the Astros' ability just to find pitching at any point in the draft from, round 6 to round 17 and get production throughout the system?
No, I mean, they get a lot of publicity, and rightfully so, for the work they've done internationally, getting all these guys who signed for 5-figure bonuses who wound up becoming contributors. And yeah, I mean, Bryce Meyer, who's our top pitching prospect right now, ranked on the list, was a 16th rounder. Even Ethan Pecco was a 6th rounder. James Hicks, who was the Fall League Pitcher of the Year, was a 13th rounder. Jackson Nezza was a 14th rounder. That's important. I mean, you would like to get, I mean, if you look at the big league level, Hunter Brown was what, a 5th round pick? Mm-hmm. So they've found some difference makers as well. No, it is very important. I do think if you look at their drafts, I think that's kind of been their strategy. I think they felt like they've had a lot of success finding pitchers, say, not in the, outside the top 3 rounds, and, very cheap, cheap internationally. And I think they're very comfortable with their pitching development. And, look, there's traits they look for, and a lot of teams look for the same traits, but, they'll get the guys with the good extension, the low release height, and the right shape on their fastball. And, there's your Spencer Arrighetti's of the world, to use another example, and they do very well with those guys. And so I think they feel confident that we don't need to take pitchers high. Now, the funny thing is, as an aside, I kind of feel like Mike Elias has brought that approach to the Orioles, and they have not had as much luck finding pitchers on the cheap, which I think has held them back. But yeah, if you're confident in your ability to do that, then it allows you to kind of focus on hitters. And I do think that's part of the reason we don't hear pitchers with them as much, because I can't, like, when's the last time they took a pitcher in the top 2 rounds of the draft?
Alonzo Treadwell, maybe a couple years ago out of UCLA. But I mean, and he was kind of injured at the time, and he's been injured a little bit in the minors. But yeah, that was the last one I could think of. For Cucci, another one, 3rd rounder, but injured one that they probably got a little deal on. So
yeah, but I mean, and those are 2 guys. I mean, those are the first 2 guys like you pointed out, they were probably looking at that like, man, this is a great value because this guy would have gone higher if he hadn't been hurt. But yeah, I do think that confidence allows them to focus on bats early on.
So Jim, right now there's the proposals going on between MLB and MLBPA, and we know that the proposal is not set in stone. What they propose is probably not what it's going to end up being. But one of the recent proposals was no high school players eligible for the draft. And I don't know if that sticks or not, but let's just say that since that's out there, do you think that changes team strategy this year? Like would teams maybe try to target high school players with a little more frequency this year, just out of the worry that, we may not be able to do it next year or years after that?
There's been a little talk about that. I think it's just the fact that we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, we're very early on. It's June. I mean, if we get, whenever the deal happens, I don't think we're going to have a deal. Probably I would think sometime after the World Series at the earliest. So I think because it's so uncertain, you wouldn't go crazy. It's not like back in 2011. there pretty much everybody was. I don't remember when the CBA for 2012 to 16 came into play, or when that was agreed upon. But everybody kind of knew that, yeah, there's going to be a bonus pool system coming, and you're not going to be able to spend whatever you want. Even though, for the most part, every year you had maybe 5 teams that were like really aggressive in spending, and 25 teams that kind of towed the line like MLB wanted them to. I know in 2011, teams definitely looked at it like, hey, we can't spend what we want to spend, like just whatever we're willing to spend anymore. And so teams were very aggressive that year. So I don't think we're at that point, because it would be, you can mess yourself up if you're like, okay, we're not going to be able to take high school players anymore. Like, we think that's going to happen. We believe it will. Well, like, what if you draft a bunch of high school players and then that doesn't happen? Like, the thing is, I think with any draft strategy, you have to draft the best player. To me personally, I don't think there's a difference between high school players and college players. You have more track record with the college players, you have more data, but talent's talent. And anytime you get into, whether it's the Moneyball strategy, oh, we're only going to take college guys with good stats. I mean, that's oversimplifying it, or, hey, we don't like high school pitchers, so we're not going to take high school pitchers in the first 2 rounds. Like, anytime, like, it's so hard to draft. Anytime you just eliminate demographics or sections of the draft, you're making it hard to get a good player. Because, I mean, from studying the draft over the years, a typical draft, you will have 5, if you're lucky, 10 really good big league players, like true star players. If you have 10 star players in a draft, that's a lot. And then you generally have another, I don't know, 15 or so players who are solid big leaguers, where they have, steady careers, where they offer solid production, can't speak, solid production year after year. But after that, it's like guys who are up and down and all over the place. So like, anytime you start saying, oh, okay, well, we're not going to do this, or we're not going to do that, or, hey, let's go get high school players, and you start like forcing a draft strategy, it really doesn't work. Like, we do this story every year, and I still have to write it for this year, where we redraft the first round from 10 years ago. And the 2016 draft was not a good draft. But just to give you an idea, so there were 34 first-round picks, and I'm still playing my list. But right now, like, the bottom of my first round looks like Tobias Myers, Rico Garcia, Jojo Romero, and Brian Baker. Like, those were the 31st or 34th best players, arguably, in that entire draft. So, like, the draft is hard. And if I'm going to start saying, well, I got to get some high school guys, I might be passing up on some good college players.
Yeah, definitely. Just curious. I thought that was interesting. One other question I got, Jim, and hopefully I've been trying to find a good answer, and I'm worried, like, oh man, if there's a lockout next year, and what does that do for minor league baseball? And I've heard 2 different things, but would minor league baseball still go on next year as planned if there was a lockout?
My understanding would be, I mean, I know they're part of the union, but it's separate. Like, if there is a lockout, I'd be hard pressed to believe the major league players union would be tell everybody to put their career on hold, because like guys reps like that would just be damaging players' careers. Now, I think it would, again, and I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding would be like before, where if you're on the 40-man, you'd be on strike and you wouldn't be participating, but everybody else, I would assume, would still be playing minor league games.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I look back at some just throughout, not just Astros prospects, but all over, and I see the guys that really missed the 2020 season because of COVID, and it felt like that really did some damage on development. Guys that were highly rated prior to that season and then missed that year, and they never really captured the shine that they may have had prior to that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure, again, not an expert, I'm not involved in negotiations, but I'm pretty sure that would be 2 separate things.
All right, Jim. Well, great stuff. Appreciate you joining us. I love MLB Pipeline. Love the stuff that y'all put out. So just appreciate you taking some time to join us here.
Oh, yeah, anytime. It was always good talking to you guys.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. So if you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. As always, thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back for our next episode of the Astros Future podcast, covering your Astros in the minor league system.